In the early spring of 1911, New York City pulsed with the noise of factories and crowded streets, a place where dreams of survival outweighed dreams of success. Inside the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, hundreds of young immigrant workers stitched clothes at relentless speed. Most were women, some barely teenagers, working long hours for little pay. Doors were often locked to prevent breaks or theft, a common but dangerous practice. No one inside imagined that an ordinary workday would soon turn into one of the deadliest industrial disasters in American history. The factory occupied the upper floors of the Ash Building, rising above Washington Square. The air inside was thick with fabric dust, oil, and exhaustion. Rows of sewing machines stood close together, leaving narrow paths between workers. Scrap fabric piled up beneath tables, ignored because speed mattered more than safety. Supervisors watched constantly, urging faster hands and fewer mistakes. Fire drills were unheard of, and few workers even knew where emergency exits were located, trusting their employers to keep them safe. On the afternoon of March 25, as the workday neared its end, a small fire ignited in a scrap bin on the 8th floor. The cause was never confirmed, but a carelessly discarded cigarette was suspected. Flames fed quickly on dry cotton scraps, spreading with terrifying speed. Workers noticed smoke before they saw fire, and panic rippled through the room. Shouts echoed as people rushed from their machines, searching desperately for a way out. Some workers ran toward the stairwell they used daily, only to find the door locked from the outside. Fear turned into terror as smoke thickened and heat intensified. Others rushed to elevators, but they could only carry a few people at a time. Elevator operators made repeated trips, risking their lives, yet dozens were left behind. With each passing second, escape options disappeared, replaced by choking smoke and roaring flames. On the 9th floor, workers initially believed they were safe, unaware of the fire below. No alarm warned them, and supervisors hesitated before reacting. By the time flames burst upward, escape routes were already compromised. The fire escape, poorly constructed and rusted, twisted under weight and collapsed, sending people falling to the ground. Outside, crowds gathered, helplessly watching the building burn as screams filled the air. Firefighters arrived quickly, but their ladders reached only the 6th floor, far below the trapped workers. Their hoses sprayed water that could not touch the highest flames. Inside, desperation forced impossible choices. Some workers clung to windows, gasping for air, faces blackened with smoke. Others held hands, praying or crying. With no other escape, many jumped, choosing a quick death over burning alive. Bodies struck the pavement with horrifying force, one after another, in full view of the crowd. Witnesses later described the sound as unbearable, a memory that haunted them for life. Nets held by firefighters tore apart under the impact. People in the streets wept openly, some fainting as they realized nothing could be done. In less than half an hour, the fire was over, leaving silence, smoke, and unimaginable loss behind. When the flames were finally extinguished, 146 workers were dead. Most were young immigrant women from Italy and Eastern Europe, families who had come to America seeking opportunity. Many bodies were so badly burned they could only be identified by personal belongings. The city was stunned, newspapers filled with images and stories of suffering. Grief spread quickly through neighborhoods as families searched morgues for missing daughters and sisters. Public anger rose alongside sorrow. People demanded answers, asking how such a tragedy could happen in a modern city. Investigations revealed shocking negligence. Locked doors, inadequate exits, no fire drills, and unsafe working conditions. Factory owners defended themselves, claiming they followed common practices of the time. For many Americans, this defense only deepened outrage, exposing how little worker lives were valued compared to profit. Funerals filled the streets for days, with thousands marching in silence under gray skies. Labor unions organized protests, calling for justice and reform. Speakers reminded crowds that the victims had names, dreams, and families. The fire became a symbol of exploitation and the human cost of unchecked industrial growth. It was no longer just a workplace accident, but a national moral failure that demanded change. The trial of the factory owners drew intense attention. Survivors testified about locked doors and ignored complaints. Despite powerful testimony, the owners were acquitted, protected by gaps in existing law. Many felt justice had been denied, yet the trial exposed the urgent need for reform. Lawmakers could no longer ignore the evidence placed before them by the voices of the dead and the living. In response, New York State created a factory investigating commission. Inspectors visited workplaces across the state, documenting unsafe conditions similar to those at Triangle. Their findings were alarming: fire hazards everywhere, little regulation, and almost no enforcement. These reports shocked the public and pressured politicians to act. For the first time, worker safety became a central political issue rather than an afterthought. Over the next few years, sweeping labor reforms were passed. New laws required unlocked exits, fire drills, sprinkler systems, and safer building designs. Working hours were limited, and child labor restrictions strengthened. These changes did not erase the tragedy, but they honored the victims by protecting future workers. The Triangle Fire became a turning point in American labor history, proving that reform often follows disaster. Survivors carried the memory for the rest of their lives. Some spoke publicly, ensuring the story was never forgotten. Others remained silent, haunted by guilt and loss. The trauma shaped their views on work, safety, and justice. Each anniversary, memorials were held to remember those who died, transforming private grief into collective remembrance. The building itself continued to stand, later becoming part of a university campus. For many years, students walked its halls unaware of the history beneath their feet. Eventually, plaques and memorials were installed, reminding visitors of what occurred there. The walls, once filled with smoke and screams, became silent witnesses to the past. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire reshaped how Americans viewed industrial labor. It revealed that economic progress without human protection was hollow and dangerous. The tragedy showed that laws are written in response to suffering, and that lives lost can force society to confront uncomfortable truths. It also demonstrated the power of collective action, as workers and citizens demanded accountability. Families of the victims rebuilt their lives slowly, often struggling with poverty after losing income earners. Communities supported one another, sharing food, money, and comfort. These acts of solidarity showed resilience in the face of heartbreak. Though justice felt incomplete, unity provided strength when institutions failed. Journalists played a crucial role, documenting conditions and keeping public attention focused. Their words ensured the fire was not dismissed as an isolated incident. Through photographs and stories, the nation was forced to see the faces behind factory labor. This exposure helped shift public opinion toward reform and responsibility. The fire also influenced future generations of activists and lawmakers. Many leaders in labor reform cited the tragedy as a defining moment in their commitment to worker rights. The lessons learned echoed through decades of safety legislation, from factories to offices, shaping modern standards still in place today. Even now, the story remains relevant. Around the world, workers continue to face unsafe conditions similar to those seen in 1911. The Triangle Fire serves as a warning that vigilance is necessary to protect lives. It reminds society that safety regulations are written in blood, not ink. Memorial ceremonies often include reading the names of the dead, restoring individuality to those once reduced to statistics. Each name represents a story interrupted, a future denied. This act of remembrance reinforces the human cost behind historical events, ensuring the tragedy remains personal, not abstract. The incident also challenged assumptions about immigration. Victims were often portrayed as faceless laborers, but the fire forced Americans to recognize immigrants as essential contributors deserving dignity and protection. This shift helped shape later debates about rights and inclusion. Teachers began including the fire in history lessons, using it to explain labor movements and social reform. Students learned that progress often follows struggle, and that ordinary people can influence change. The story became a tool for education and awareness. Artists, writers, and filmmakers drew inspiration from the tragedy, preserving it through creative expression. These works allowed new generations to connect emotionally with the past, keeping the memory alive beyond textbooks and monuments. Though over a century has passed, the fire's impact endures in every emergency exit sign and safety drill. These everyday precautions are silent tributes to those who died. Few people think about their origin, yet they exist because others once had no escape. The triangle fire illustrates how negligence can become lethal when combined with greed. It warns against prioritizing profit over people. This lesson remains vital in all industries, reminding leaders of their responsibility to protect human life. Survivors often said the hardest part was knowing the disaster was preventable. Simple measures could have saved lives, making the loss even more painful. This knowledge fueled their determination to speak out, ensuring the dead were not forgotten. Each retelling of the story renews its purpose. By remembering, society honors the victims and reaffirms its commitment to safety and justice. Forgetting would mean risking repetition. The tragedy stands as one of America's most important real incidents, not because of its horror alone, but because of the change it inspired. From ashes and grief came reform, awareness, and a new understanding of responsibility. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire remains a powerful reminder that history is shaped by ordinary people in extraordinary moments. Their suffering transformed laws and lives, leaving a legacy that continues to protect millions, proving that even in tragedy, meaning and progress can emerge.